do other than to hit the listeners with everything.
This is Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Here are your hosts, Dr. Tim Slekar and Dr. Johnny Lupinacci, educated educators talking education.
Welcome back Monday. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk, educated educators talking education. 855-752-4842 is the number. Give us a call, jump in, break it down with me and Johnny Lupinacci, man. Thank you for holding together everything on Friday night. I know I had took the night off and
it was good. I mean, we had a blast. Aaron and I got acquainted, and I mean, he ran the boards. He did an excellent job. We had great callers. LA Tom came in for almost a whole segment. My man and I were chopping it up. So you were missed, but we held down the fort.
I always worry. I'm like, okay, if Johnny Lupinacci and LA Tom ever were just the two of you, you probably guys would just continue talking.
Yeah, we did great, man. I mean, it was fun. I brought in some Baldwin. I brought in some recap from teacher Joanna had sent me some great resources from Jeffrey Duncan Andrade, and that was really fun to kind of talk about just how important. We landed on all the week's great themes, and we're going to carry it into this week, but how relational this work all is. How on the ground it is, and how good teaching and like great public education all hinges on the fabric of strong relationships and strong democracy.
I was going to say, and strong democracy, and boy, Monday night, right into the democracy.
Right,
we said we were planning this show. We have democracy in action. The Busted Pencils Hero Award. We're announcing it tonight. The first night we're putting it out there. That doesn't mean that all of you, we've thought about you coming up to this, people who have done democracy, but doing democracy in action, the Hero Award. Man, check this out though, Johnny. We were talking about this last week when, the idea of charter schools. When we talk about charter schools, and it's like, okay, are charter schools public? Are they private? It gets murky. It gets we're not exactly sure. We talked to Mike DeGeer from Colorado, and they were talking about, the fact that in front of their legislature, they had a bill to bring accountability to the charter schools in Colorado that were not overseen by elected school boards.
Yeah,
sounds like a great idea. Yes. Well, check it out. We end up right here. The State Board of Education in Michigan last week.
Hey, loyal to the mitten.
Yeah, they approved a resolution during its meeting calling for legislation to open charter schools to be treated more like public schools. That's in the state of Michigan. And guess where this came from? It came from our friend. Well, he's the associate professor of music education at Michigan State University. He's held previous collegiate appointments at the University of Connecticut and Eastman School of Music. He's also served, almost introduced him before it was time, editor of the Music Educators Journal and on the editorial boards of several research and professional journals. And check this out. He was elected to the State Board of Education in Michigan in November of 2022. Welcome back. Our democracy in action, Busted Pencils hero, my brother from another mother, Mitchell Robinson. How are you, Mitchell?
Great. Good to be with you both.
How'd you like that for a lead-in, man?
I'm taking you guys on the road with me. That's great.
All right.
We know how to bring it.
Anytime, Mitch. Anytime.
So much here, Mitchell. We said we talked last week about Colorado and their desire to bring accountability, in one sense, to the charter schools. Explain to us now a resolution from the State Board of Education in Colorado. It was a bill in front of. This is a little bit different. So help us bring this apart. A little civics 101 teaching for everybody. What's a resolution from the State Board of Education as opposed to legislation from the legislature?
Well, the State Board of Education in Michigan does not have authority to pass legislation, obviously. We're not legislators. We are, for the most part, educators and public education advocates, most of us, I would say. But what we can do is offer advice and guidance to the legislation. Also important to note here, the State Board of Ed in Michigan has passed resolutions on charter school accountability and transparency in the past. Our former president, Dr. Cassandra Aldrich, was instrumental in getting one of those proposals passed a few years ago, but the legislature was not amenable, shall we say. So we've gone through 40 years, 40 years of Republican control in Michigan. Okay. Which our friends in Ohio are familiar with, and friends in many states are familiar with. I've tried personally to get several things before the legislature, and nothing was ever given a hearing. So we feel like we've been kind of wandering in the desert for 40 years. And then a couple of years ago, we had a blue trifecta in our state. And the Democrats right now hold the governor's mansion, and they hold the Senate and the House. Now, they don't hold the House right now, but tomorrow we have held the House, but we had 2 Democratic members that ran for other offices and left us tied. Right? We're exactly tied. So nothing really has happened with a tied legislature, but tomorrow are 2 special elections, and we have 2 Democratic candidates running in those elections. They are both favored to win. So sometime soon, we're going to be back and able to start putting legislation forward. So I think the difference between the last resolution and this one is now we have a much more favorable political climate in the state. We have good friends in the legislature. We have a record number of former teachers in the legislature, including people chairing the House and Senate education committees. So I'm hopeful that we'll get something moved.
So here we are. So this is the charter, and it's a resolution. Now, you being a member of the State Board of Education, elected, again, democracy in action, Johnny Lupinacci, right there, an educated educator who's actually doing democracy by getting elected to the State Board. Mitchell, you authored this resolution, my understanding, or how it works. And so you put this.
How it worked was that last November is I put together a resolution, and when you're doing something like this, there's no sense in trying to come up with boilerplate things when lots of smart people have put together similar resolutions. There have been national resolutions, county resolutions. So I did what most of us in academia did. If you steal from one source, it's plagiarism. If you steal from multiple sources, it's research. So I looked at a lot of different resolutions, found a lot of very good ideas, made them specific to Michigan. And then from November until April, we workshopped it. We have a legislative committee for the State Board of Ed. We have a really strong Michigan Department of Ed with great staff members. The state superintendent of instruction is very strong as well. And all those people provided guidance and input, and we came up with what I thought was a very strong, much stronger resolution than I had originally written. And we presented that to the board last Tuesday, and it passed 6-1.
So it's a charter school. And we said every time we get into this, we run into having to give a little bit of an education, because charter school, is it public? Is it private? And I understand why we're against vouchers without any type of transparency. But charter schools, I heard they were, and I'm just kind of mentioning what my neighbor would say to me. My neighbor would say, but Tim, charter schools are public. I don't understand all of the kind of why you're so upset and why you're worried about charter schools. They're public schools. And Mitchell, kind of, but not really necessarily, right?
Well, I would say charter schools are technically public schools. I would say the only thing public about charter schools is their funding. So, and interestingly, the head of the state's charter school kind of lobby also doesn't seem to understand that charter schools are public schools, because what he said to me and a couple of other conservative outlets is that I wanted to get rid of charter schools because I've written previously that I don't think that public money should go towards private schools. And so I gently pointed out to them that charter schools are technically public schools. So when I say public dollars shouldn't go towards private schools, I'm not really talking about charter schools.
Right.
Except they think that charter schools are private schools. So I think we have some educating to do for the people that are advocating and lobbying for charter schools as well.
Well, because Johnny and I have talked about this too, because there are quote public charter schools, and I think in Wisconsin in particular, there is a very much a district level charter school within school districts. So in one of the school districts that I'm familiar with in Wisconsin, Verona Area School District, there are charter schools then created by that district that are directly accountable to the board in that Verona area school district. They don't live outside of the bounds of the elected school board. And so in that sense, that's truly a charter school, public schools, and it has the accountability and transparency. There's a loophole in a lot of charters where they're still funded by public monies, but then they exist outside of the bounds of locally elected school boards. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Well, we have to talk about two things. One, we have to talk about who authorizes charter schools and, in essence, provides the charter and whatever oversight there is. And then we also have to talk about governance. And so charter schools in Michigan can be authorized by universities, by ISDs, intermediate school districts, by local school districts. They can be authorized by any of those educational agencies, as we call them. In practice, about 90% of the charters in our state are authorized by one or two charters. A couple of universities. One is a 2-year community college that doesn't offer any education degrees. So I have some questions about what kind of oversight is happening in those from those authorizers. But then we have to talk about how those schools are being governed. And the chartering arrangements with what are called charter management organizations often call for the charter management organization and or the educational authorizer to retain authority to appoint and remove charter school, PSA board members. Those board members are never elected by citizens of the communities in which those schools reside. So, we opened the show tonight talking about governance, and now we're talking about democracy. And to me, the big problem with charter schools is they are not democratic institutions. And they're also a terrible idea financially. In our state, I don't know how it is where everyone else is, but in our state, we struggle to fund one public school system. Trying to fund two parallel public school systems is financially irresponsible.
The way you put that together is for people to understand our neighbors, particularly who try to think it's like public private. I know, and it get it all together, and it's like, oh, okay, so wait a minute. I think that's what we're really talking about, though, too. When you say the governance of these charter schools is they're outside of the bounds of democracy. The governance of these charter schools, and that's what you were trying to put in this resolution. The way I understand it is to go, whoa, wait a minute. There's got to be, if with public monies, democracy has to be the governing body when it comes to public monies. And boy, some people think this sounds crazy that when public money, that democracy should have a say, but that's what we do. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Our guest is my brother from another mother, Mitchell Robinson. Hey. He is our democracy in action hero. More when we get back. All right, one segment done. I think, Johnny, what do you think? Are we clear on what we mean by charter schools at this point?
I think so. I mean, we might just recap just a little bit around, because I think for folks, we're so often hearing charter or public, and like to understand, I mean, just to reiterate, like there are for-profit charters that really, have a record of taking advantage of families and community, and ultimately children and teachers and families lose. And so this just puts in the kinds of accountability and transparency that help protect our communities from that. So it's not outlawing the option of having a public charter, but it will still belong to, public school jurisdiction. And that's an important step in this.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really helpful.
Yeah. This whole thing too, now we're really saying it's like, okay, you want public schools, then you want democracy. If you don't want if you don't want democracy, then you don't want public.
Right.
We do. We love talking about it. It's Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk, educated educators talking education. 855-752-4842 is the number. If you want to call, give us a call. If you're still confused about charter schools, what are they? Why is there opposition to charter schools? I thought they were public, and I thought Tim and Johnny are like pro-public education. How is it that they have guests now, second time in a row? They've got people that sound like they've got a problem with charter schools. Well, Johnny, You help them out. I've been talking too much, dude.
Well, I mean, I love it, and I love the work Mitch is bringing, to the community in Michigan, and his team is working on this, and I think it echoes this idea, like we have this mess in the landscape of what school choice means for parents and members of our community, and this whole idea is we're often marketed like, hey, you should have options. But in between the lines, that's meant, opening up to the free market, our education system, and far too often for-profit charters. So we've said there's like different types of charters. There's nonprofit charters. There's, community charters. There are for-profit charters. There are large, like kind of equivalent of like cookie cutter, big box, fast food industry versions of this. And so one of the things that like we're really making clear is, here we have this situation where we've really deregulated public education and education to the point where kind of anybody can open a school. I know that's a little oversimplifying it, but you could put together a plan and you could have sort of a for-profit or a political agenda. I know Mitch is shaking his head because I said I'm oversimplifying it. He's like, actually, you're not, man. You could technically, we could have the Tim and Johnny Charter School, and what's happening here in Michigan is really great. And it's also what, Bill and Shirley last week were talking about, or Jane Shirley, they were saying, hey, let's have some legislation that puts some accountability back in what constitutes a school. Because in the end, families and community and children have suffered at the hands of these large for-profit charters. They in some promise the world. So parents, think like, okay, well, this is a great option. Maybe this is a better fit for my child. They go there and it doesn't deliver. And now you're kind of at this loss. But what it was is it all was just a marketing scheme to make money off of families and kids. And one of the things this kind of legislation does is puts accountability in, says, okay, you want an option in your district or you want some different schools. Well, they have to kind of play ball by the rules of education. And there are some important factors. One of them being is they can't refuse students. If they have space, right, then students are allowed in. They can't sort of, run this. We're going to do things at lower cost and pay teachers less and make more. There's this profit margin that has to be transparent, right? Their intentions and their politics need to be transparent because there has to be some kind of regulation, right? So it's kind of a middle ground. It sounds like to me, it's a middle ground between free market, laissez-faire, anything goes. And hold on a second, because this is really important. We still advocate for public schools, but maybe within the public school system, there are possibilities for options that don't harm our public school infrastructure. They kind of fit with it.
Yeah. Well, so many great points there. I think we have to back up also and remember that charter schools were originally an idea of teachers' unions. And they came out of teachers wanting to be innovative in pedagogical and many different ways. And I've studied charter schools for a couple of decades now. I have never seen innovation in the charter school sector, unless you're talking about real estate scams and other kind of problems. The other thing is in Michigan, we are completely agnostic about what kind of schools parents want to send their kids to. We have school choice in Michigan. Parents can send their kids to any school they choose to. Choice is not the same as vouchers. And that these two issues get convoluted all the time. And what we have in Michigan is schools of choice legislation, thanks to Betsy DeVos. We need to name that elephant in the room as well. And now that Betsy DeVos doesn't have a platform and doesn't have power in the state, what we're seeing is a swing back to understanding that if you want public funds, that you have to play on a level playing field. We also often hear from our friends on the right that education is a business. I'm a teacher. Education is not a business. Businesses have different rules. The only way that education can be a business is if you're trying to make a profit, and schools are not profit centers. So for a school to make more money, about 90% of our budget in schools is people, is personnel. We're not Ford, we're not the auto industry. So when you want to make more money in a school, you have to do a couple of things. You have to pay teachers less, charters do. You have to pay administrators more, charters do. And you have to make sure that the kids that you're letting in the school are cheaper to teach. So that means getting rid of kids with special education issues, with IEPs. It means getting rid of kids with behavioral problems. And you were talking about the large box kind of schools. National Heritage Academies is one of the biggest chains in the country. I think the second largest. It's located in Michigan, and that's exactly what National Heritage Academy charter schools have done.
Yeah.
They've been sued by teachers in their schools for not offering required special ed services, and instead of offering those services, they have settled out of court. They fired the teacher, settled out of court. So if you want to play hockey, you play by hockey rules. If you want to play basketball, you can't play on skates. And what we've been doing in Michigan is allowing charter schools to play by hockey rules while the rest of us are playing by basketball rules. And it's been an uneven playing field. The only people that should be worried about accountability for charter schools are people that are trying to get profitable off charter schools and off of families. And we're not going to let that happen.
Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk, educated educators talking education. Our guest, Mitch Robinson, he is State Board of Education in Michigan, put forward a resolution last week for charter school accountability. You know, hey, playing by the same rules. We're saying it's a basketball game. We want basketball rules enforced all the way across. And particularly, though, again, locating this within the democracy of which public schools are, they're getting public money from the taxpayers, and therefore then those who pay the taxpayers and citizens. Democracy is what is the governing board there, which is typically some form of a school board. And Mitch, what you were talking about, though, too, is saying, so I get a charter authorized. It sounds like what that authorizes me to do is collect public monies. It doesn't authorize me to play by any of the rules, because if I want to play by my own rules, I get the public charter, I get the ability to take money, and then I appoint my governing board of people who I like, therefore making sure that the way I do business is kind of, again, and people are like, well, wait, they're governed by a board. No, not the same thing as an elected school board of okay, Mitch, right?
Well, and there's another layer in between. So let's say I'm a university with a charter school office and I want to authorize a charter school. I can do that. And then I can turn over the management of that charter school to a private, for-profit charter management organization. And that happens in Michigan, especially in Detroit. We lead the nation. 90% of our charter schools in Detroit are of the for-profit variety, more than any other state in the country. One of my colleagues on the board referred to our charter school landscape as the Wild West of charter schools. Virtually no regulation.
Well, it sounds like what's happening then, though, too, is that it's a for-profit management system, and you say this is where it gets cloudy. It's Busted Pencils. It's fully leaded education talk. The number is 855-752-4842. Mitch Robinson, our guest, talking about public accountability for charter schools. It's about time. And when we get back, we're going to bring it more. Busted Pencils, fully leaded, back after the break.
To talk about it.
Nice job, fellas.
Nice. Okay, Mitch, this is the bathroom break. Yep. What, bathroom break or water break if you need it?
Okay, thanks.
And we won't even see if you leave.
Only I will know, and I won't tell. I promise.
Oh, I think that bringing home to that idea, what Mitch just said, not idea, but the fact of so a college can authorize a public charter, but then authorize a private charter school management company to take over the business side. And go ahead, Mitch.
The two biggest authorizers in our state are Central Michigan University and Bay Mills Community College, and neither one of them should be authorizing anything. I'm actually really proud of the fact that Michigan State doesn't authorize any charter schools. So yeah.
What's the incentive for like Central Michigan? I mean, they have to be getting something by being the authorizer, right?
Yeah. Central Michigan's charter school office is named after John Engler, who was a Republican governor who was out in disgrace. He was brought in to be interim president of Michigan State and had to leave in disgrace, said some awful racist and sexist things. So it's a profit center. It's actually interesting. Their charter school office is not in the College of Education. Because the College of Ed said, no, we don't want anything to do with you.
College of Ed doesn't want to be affiliated with it.
No.
Johnny, what's going on with your home state, buddy?
Michigan?
Yeah, man. What crazy?
Man,
well,
I mean, just finally, you want the quick
sanity
version?
No, I know. I know.
We were cooking with. I mean, we had great education state when I became a teacher, and I actually in my first few years of teaching came in under the beginning of the Engler reign, and it just decimated
what
things.
the hell?
I mean,
yeah,
it's like Scott Walker. Scott Walker
in Wisconsin.
Yeah, but Scott Walker is more this steroids version of Engler, but he just crushed it, man. Just decimated things.
I would say the good news though is that in the past year and a half, I've seen the ratio of my students who want to leave the state versus stay in the state absolutely flip. From 70% want to get the hell out of Michigan, now they want to stay. I have kids that were offered great jobs in Virginia and Indiana and Illinois, and they're like, hey, things are looking good. We pay our student teachers. Right? We pay student teachers $9,800 for the semester of student teaching. They don't have to go in debt that semester. So, and we've done all that since we got the blue trifecta. So
we had Julian Vasquez Helig from Western Michigan on last week talking about, you grow your own stuff in Michigan and just you guys right now are setting the, oh my God, I want to move to Michigan now.
Well, it's been a long time coming, but I think things are moving in the right direction.
And sadly, also, Mitch, the nation is tanking. So, the options for the grass being greener on the other side, the kids are seeing the upswing.
Oh, and when my students ask me where can I go, where teachers are respected and schools are funded, it's getting to be a very short list.
Yep, exactly. So that's the bad news about that. But this is great. And man, MSU has always had just an innovative teacher preparation program. Because I remember even when I was becoming a teacher, my colleagues that were student teaching for MSU, they had already graduated and they were essentially doing an internship and coming out with this. They were getting hired almost like our MITs do, where they had like classroom placement and they're getting a certain number of credits towards their masters, and they were just entering the workforce. I felt like I was well prepared, but I felt like they had a jump on us, and it wasn't, and it was hard earned. It just seemed like it's always been
not to rain on your parade, but that was called the Holmes Group, HOLMES, Holmes Group model. And this enrollment cliff is real, and enrollment in our teacher ed program was down 30%. So what they've done is they've moved away from that Holmes Group model, and they're back to a 4-year model instead of the 5-year, and not a master's degree.
See that? Yeah, and that was that same model
paying the teachers, because that was a big thing. Like, hey, we take this huge hit in student teaching, but my peers that were MSU student teachers were like, yeah, but what we're getting out of this is some master's credits and like a jump on when we enter the workforce. Yeah, this seems much better.
Coming back. Busted Pencils fully. Yeah, we can save you. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Educated educators talking education. 855-752-4842. People on the live stream are like, man, they just keep talking right through the commercials. That's right. Jump onto the Facebook, on the Twitter, on the YouTube stream, or I guess it's not Twitter anymore. We have to say that thing to that other place, X or something they call it. You can be checking it out. Yeah, when the commercials are on, we keep talking, because guess what? You've got educated educators in the room, and we like to talk education. Our guest tonight, Mitch Robinson, he's an elected member of the State Board of Education in Michigan. We were saying, Mitch, I think the last time we had you on the show, you were a candidate, and there it is. So congratulations, and you're now 2 years in doing the work. Let's do a quick little deviation, because we said we're giving you the Busted Pencils Democracy in Action Hero Award. What's it like though now, doing democracy and being that member of an elected school board? Because I mean, you were a vocal advocate of public schools, and then you said, you know what, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and you ran for office and you got it. How's it going? Inspiring? Should more people do it? Should more educators who want to get involved? Would you recommend this for them?
Well, let me say two things. Number one, it's been great when we're getting stuff done. And since I've been on the board, and I'm not saying the board did all this, but the legislature has been fantastic in getting things done. After, like I said before, a long time of getting nothing done because of the Republican control in the state. But since I've been on the board, the legislature has repealed an A through F accountability system, has repealed the retention portion of the read by grade 3 laws, has greatly changed educator evaluation laws. They're much better than they were. Has raised teacher pay 3 consecutive years. We pay student teachers $9,800 a semester when they teach. We have better reciprocity with other states for teachers. We have common sense gun laws that the governor got passed that make schools safer. Yeah. And we have free school breakfast and lunch for every child in a public school in Michigan, which is a game changer. So when we're getting stuff like that done, it's fantastic. When we're not, it's really frustrating. But what's been good about it is that we have a lot more educators, former educators, that now serve in the House and the Senate in Michigan. Excellent. And they completely get it. So we have the chair of the House and Senate education committees. Other members of those committees are former teachers of the year in the state, former teachers all across the state. So talking to them, we have a shorthand, right? They're not civilians, right? They're pros. They understand the issues that we're talking about. And on the docket coming up, we're looking at pre-K and community college for all. We're expanding pre-K down to age 4, better dyslexia screening. And my next resolution that I'm putting in front of the board, probably next month, is going to be on reducing or eliminating standardized testing. So we're trying to hit the big issues while the iron is hot. Right. This is the time.
Well, so there is inspiration there, because you think about that, for any listener out there is like, should I get involved? The answer is yes, because what you're describing though is that, you've got educators that are fully involved, that are on the legislature, that are in the state board of education like you. Yep. So bringing all of those people together, educators stepping up and doing democracy, the work then of advocating for public schools, which, we say is the foundation, we know is the foundation of democracy. Well, then having people like you in these positions of democracy, state board, state legislator, school board member, getting involved in being there, because Mitch, the way you said it, because your knowledge of what goes on there means that the ability to do things that make sense, where people go, where would this have come from? You must not have been a teacher. They weren't. That's not to dismiss really good, smart people, but it's to realize that there is something that an educator brings to these discussions, particularly when it comes to advocating for what's needed in public schools. For needed. We always have this conversation with people. It's like, you guys sound like you're just asking for the world. And we're like, we're talking about needs. We're not talking about wants. You want to do a show on wants? We can do those. We're talking about needs. It sounds like what's happening in Michigan are the needs are finally being met. That's what I'm hearing right there.
Anyone who's studied democracy or this country knows that this country was founded on the idea of a citizen legislature. And that's what we are getting closer to in Michigan. The Democratic House and Senate looks like Michigan. There's much more diversity. There are more women in charge. That it looks like Michigan. And when you have a citizen legislature, you're going to get the things that the people need. When you've only got old, pale, stale males in the House and the Senate, then nothing happens, and that's what they want. The status quo favors the people that have the advantages. So, what we're trying to do. I mean, I'm a 65-year-old white married professor at a Big Ten institution with tenure. I have some, I check every one of the boxes on the privilege checklist. If I'm not going to use that privilege and power to help people that don't have it, then what the hell am I doing with it?
Oh my God. Look at Anya too. Pale scale male. She loved that quote from you.
Pale, stale.
Stale.
Stale. Even better. Pale
stale males. Well, you know what? And anybody watching the live feed right now, it's like, boy, you guys are the epitome of that description, Johnny Lupinacci. But I tell you what, though, I think Johnny and I have better hair than you, Mitch.
Absolutely.
Come
I
on,
aspire. I aspire to that landscape that you have there.
Yeah.
Lupinacci, you got something, man.
Oh man, I'm just happy to hear this. I mean, it's exciting. One, Michigan is my home state, even though I've been now in Washington for 10 years. It's an honor to be here as a teacher educator, but it's through the trials and tribulations of being a Michigan teacher, being a teacher in Detroit and in Southeast Michigan and working with so many great teacher preparation programs that constitute those leaders that Mitch is saying now have, taken up their civic duty and are applying their knowledge as representatives of citizens of Michigan to make good decisions across the aisle. This isn't, we talk about this all the time. This isn't something that in particular Republicans ought to have one stance on and Democrats have the other, and then we just fight. It's really about, okay, let's have a basis for the strength of our state, of our democracy. Education is a state right. And so this does differ from state to state, but it's great to hear the good things happening in Michigan. In the break, we were talking about, joking a little bit about it. When I was learning to be a teacher, it was a no-brainer in terms of everyone knew Michigan was a great state to be a teacher. And that was true for the first few years of my classroom teaching. And very quickly, that started to come undone. Similar to Wisconsin's Act 10, I started really attacking unions. I started really inter charters and then closures of public schools left and right, especially in Detroit. And the champion of, hey, look what's happening in New Orleans after Katrina. And it was like, wait, they had a natural disaster that devastated communities. And they're utilizing that disaster to decimate public education. We haven't even had that disaster. We had some big economic fallout in Michigan, but yet we are that model is being championed to tear apart our schools and really make it almost impossible to stay a teacher. So it's amazing. Yeah.
We didn't need Katrina. We had Betsy. We didn't need a natural disaster. We had a man-made disaster in Michigan. And I can't tell you how gratifying it is to have her kind of out of the conversation. Her following has diminished. Now, not to say that she's not working like a demon behind the scenes. She's trying to get things back. And so we never take anything for granted, right? In our state, the blueness of our state we are enjoying right now, but it's a purple state, and we don't take any election for granted. I've been going out and talking to county organizations about the importance of local school board elections. One of my colleagues is doing some screenings for school board elections. That's the other side of the aisle. Stated policy is their Trojan horse is getting Moms for Liberty candidates and other people onto local school boards. And so I think we have to stay vigilant. But the good news is that teachers understand this. If we listen to teachers, and my suspicion is we don't, because a lot of them are women, and we have not listened to women. If we would just listen to teachers and pay attention, I think any public school teacher in my state could be doing what I'm doing on the State Board of Ed. Any one of them. And frankly, I'm a little disappointed that there aren't more people like Tim and Johnny across the country as college teacher educators that aren't willing to stand up and speak out for public education. So thank you both for doing what you're doing.
Wow, man.
It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday now. Times, Mitch. Busted Pencils every day of the week. We're out there doing it. It is Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk, educated educators talking education. Our guest, Mitch Robinson, he is on the Michigan. He's elected member of the Michigan, the State of Education, blah, 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 the State Board of Education in Michigan. And talking about the resolution that was authored by Mitch that got passed to say charter schools, we need some accountability And now we're looking to hopefully the legislature will take this up then in the state of Michigan. We were talking about last week in Colorado that actually the legislature had already passed it, but they were hoping to see whether or not they were going to get the votes needed to put it in forward, because there was a ton, and this is what will come back to Betsy DeVos, of billionaire money being funneled to knock out the resolution for charter school accountability in Colorado. And Mitch, when you say Betsy DeVos right now, it's kind of nice, but the reality is she's still a billionaire and she still thinks she matters. And in fact, I would say she probably still really does, because she still has billions of dollars that she seems to be willing to spend to take out public school accountability or charter school accountability. I mean, let's be honest, right? That's where she's coming from.
The other good news, though, here in Michigan is that our state's Republican Party is just an absolute disaster. So we have two dueling factions that each think that they are the Michigan Republican Party. They've been locked out of their computers, they've been locked out of their office buildings. So what we're trying to do is, frankly, take advantage of the chaos on the other side. And I will say that the Michigan State Board of Ed and the House and the Senate and the governor's office and everything right now on the blue side of the ledger, we're organized, we're motivated, and we aren't getting in each other's way. We're speaking with one voice. So people like Julian over at Western Michigan are hugely important. My colleague Josh Cowan in the College of Ed at Michigan State coming out with a new book on vouchers in June, I think. We have lots of really good, smart people and some of the best teachers in the country. And again, if we just listen to them, we'll do the right things.
Man, we've talked about the teacher shortage. I can't imagine. I mean, right now, people listening to this show are sitting there going like, let me relocate to Michigan and become a teacher in the state of Michigan, because it's feeling like they're at least taking us seriously for the first time. Mitch, though, too, I mean, I want to definitely have you back, though, to talk about the resolution you're putting forward to end standardized testing, because whoa. You know this, man. I'm an original opt-out guy. I mean, I pulled my son and daughter out of No Child Left Behind testing, and became the scourge of central Pennsylvania for how dare I do that and try to hurt my kids' schools by taking them out. And we kept trying to say, look, man, opt out. It's these standardized tests. They were designed with one thing in mind: to kill the public school system. And Mitch put a resolution. Some people I've even heard this saying, well, isn't that testing craze over? No, it's not. It's not. Just because we don't have No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top. Guess what, though? As we were talking to our favorite teachers, our Educators Amplified partners in Milwaukee last week, it's testing season, and they know it, and everybody knows it. So our guest tonight, Mitch Robinson, he is from Michigan State University, but he is the elected State Board of Education, put forth a resolution for charter school accountability. Good luck on that, Mitch, man. And here's the reality. You are our democracy in action hero. Thanks for busting pencils, Mitch.
Thank you, Mitch.
I'm looking forward to receiving the check. Thank you.
All right, it is on its way. We'll during the commercial, I'll write out that check. Busted pencils. Johnny and Tim, break it down when we get back.
5,000 feet below, as black smoke engulfs the sky, the ocean floor explodes, 11 mothers cry, our bones all resonate, our burning
All right, Mitch, thank you so much, our friend.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Anya, thank you. If I don't know if you're listening or not.
Thanks, Mitch.
Thank you for all your help. I appreciate it. Thanks,
Mitch.
gentlemen. Have a good rest of your show.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. And when you get that resolution, let us know so we can get you back on.
Will do.
All right, man. Thank you.
Okay. See ya. Bye.
Bye. Man, putting out the full court press on making the desire to live in Michigan sound like, oh my goodness, man, full court press on public schools. And yeah, it sounds like they really have their act together, man. He's echoing what Julian was telling us.
Yep.
You got to think too, if they keep that together like that, it's going to be hard to defeat them, because there's going to be a lot of happy people.
Yep. Hey, before I say it on the live, I put it in the chat. it might be fun in this last segment to tease. I still think until we have from Maggie's office the details, and we've confirmed all of our travel, let's just say, hey, it's in the works, but
a real tease.
Save the date. Save the date.
Yeah. Schools in. Schools in. It's Busted Pencils fully leaded.
Yeah.
Education Talk, educated educators talking education. 855-752-4842. Great guest for the first half part of the show. Mitch Robinson, Michigan State music education faculty, State Board of Education member. The last now 2 years puts forth a resolution to have charter schools, guess what? To be accountable like all public schools in the state of Michigan. That's all. Just public schools and public schools playing by the same rules. That's all they're asking for.
I love the way Mitch broke it down for us, Tim. He's like, you got to play by the rules. And he gave us that great, I love a sports analogy.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't till after a few years of teaching when students finally said, dude, you got to stop only doing sports analogies in class. I was like, I know. And I diversified my interests, but I learned through sports metaphors. So Mitch breaking that down, saying, we are all like, if public schools are playing by the rules of basketball and charter schools get to play hockey rules, and it just doesn't work. And that's a great way to put it, and this bill being a great step towards where are we at and how do we go forward? Well, one step forward in support of democracy, is that our public schools all play by the same rules, and that included in that, and this is a core democratic value, Tim.
Thank you.
We build trust through transparency. And so that whole thing that our guests last week, that came on, talked about dark money. And like that just puts a spotlight on that. You don't get to move the money around and create these for-profit charters that ultimately, do damage to schools and really harm at the expense of children getting a good education. And it still allows for that innovative sort of origin of the idea that Mitch was talking about. There's still a lot of creative and innovative ways that teachers and school districts and partnerships with universities or in districts can explore alternatives, but they have to be transparent and they have to play by the rules. And so this is a fantastic step forward in Michigan, an archetype for the nation right now, kind of what Colorado is battling at the moment. And so,
well, you think about it, it's reminding me too a lot of Wisconsin and the possibilities in a Wisconsin to bring forth this same type of reality. I mean, right now you've got a gerrymandered legislature that's really tough in Wisconsin to take out, but they've got a Democratic governor, and it is a state that is committed to public education and democracy. Man, a few more democracy and action heroes, from Busted Pencils listeners out there stepping up to get on school boards, to run for legislature, to do that work. Because here's the other thing. When an educator steps up and makes the conversation about, look, I'm doing this because it's what's best for our community, what's best for our kids, what's best for our schools. Man, I tell you what, sometimes even in a gerrymandered district, the ability to talk about taking care of your neighbors cuts across that gerrymandering where people go, you know what? I like my kids. I like my neighborhood schools. I actually like the prom. I like Friday night football. Wait a minute. I'm thinking I might see the possibility of voting for an educator then to be part of the legislature, because as Mitch just said, citizen democracy, right? That's who it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be representative of the who. So people who are in the legislature are supposed to look like the communities. And way too often in lots of places now, legislatures really tend to reflect the money that they take and find where they get the money from. And you're going to find typically how you can predict how they're going to vote for anything, and which typically is then not representative of the citizens. And it's therefore not very democratic, Johnny Lupinacci. Thinking about democracy though, right? In Wisconsin, I mean, can you imagine like the potential of a Busted Pencils on location type of possibility, maybe?
I mean, talking about the local listeners out there, if you're local to Madison, mark your calendar for April 30th. There's still a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot, but we're going to tease it here for listeners tonight. Mark your calendar, April 30th. This time, live show from a local place near you. So Madison folks, be thinking about it. Join Tim and I. We'll have more details to come as the week unfolds. The I's dot and the T's cross. But, listen to Civic Media. Listen to your shows. You'll hear promos as it comes together because Tim and Johnny are exploring the possibility.
And it doesn't have to just be high probability. It doesn't just have to be Madison. Hey, if you want to come from Waukesha, get down here. If you want to come from La Crosse, get down here. If you want to come from Hayward, get down here. Chicago Teachers Union, we know you're listening. Get there. Get a bus together and drive up to Madison for the night. More details to come. We're teasing it, though. We're just teasing it. But if you want to pull out your calendar, pull out your pencil, your busted pencil, mark down that date, April 30th. It looks like something might be happening.
Exciting stuff.
A lot of fun. Yeah, a lot of exciting stuff. Truly bringing democracy in action. Busted pencils. That's what we like to do. We want to be an example for everybody out there who is saying, public schools, democracy. You guys are always talking about those two being linked up. Yeah, we do. We talk about them all the time being linked up. Because, again, your public school system, and goes back to what Mitchell was talking about with accountability, playing by the same rules. Because in democracy, that's the reality is that democracy has to have a clear rule book that everybody knows how those rules are enforced. And therefore, the ability then to know when things are going awry or when things are not. And so democracy requires a shared rule book.
Yep. Trust and transparency.
And that's what we do. Busting pencils every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for you guys, and sometimes.
And Tim, glad that we're back together on the.
I was going to say,
Anya, glad to have you back, producing everything. It's, things go great all the time, but they go extraordinary when we've got our full lineup. So I appreciate you both. Listeners, we appreciate you too.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. Busted Pencils. It's fully leaded education talk tomorrow. Looks like we're going to do some trending news, education news. There's a lot going on. We've been having lots and lots and lots of guests. We got to bring you back up to date with the news. Busted. Yeah. All the time. We want to make sure. And the other part, though, too, is bring the phones, open up the phones, come on in tomorrow night. Lots of opportunity to tell us what you all have been thinking, because you say like, man, you guys have had lots of guests on lately. We have, because we've got lots of people who want to talk and we want to bring them. And we say, and I'll even put it out there that if you're saying, could I be a guest on your show? Yes, you could. Give us a call, send us an email, tag us, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube. Make us known, man. We would love to hear from you, because this is the Blue Collar Scholar Show. We want you on talking about schools. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk, trending news tomorrow night. Have a good night.
You bet.